Hi everyone. We are in John Wenham's book, The Goodness of God. We're in a section about the principles of punishment in the Old Testament. Before we start to read Wenham, I wanted us to think about some questions we might ask in relation to the Old Testament. Do I view the Old Testament laws as extreme? What would they accomplish, and who would they benefit? And specifically, where do I get my impressions about the Old Testament? Have we read the Pentateuch as a whole, or only in select sections? Have we read without bias, with our watchtower glasses, say, if you're an ex-witness, as I am, or by what we hear in the secular world? I thought I had studied the Bible as a Jehovah's Witness. I had not. I had studied Jehovah's Witness teachings and watchtower publications. We are in great danger of misunderstanding the Bible if we only get it in bits, in sections. The Bible is not laid out topically, as watchtower publications are. We need to read it in context. Topical studies do not replace reading the Bible in context. So even though I'm not discouraging you from reading books, and topical books even, but don't think it replaces you doing your own reading of the book in context. So that's just in way of something that I've discerned, is that if you only read books about things, even arguing about how to defend or what's wrong with something, and don't actually look at the source in complete form, you're going to run into misunderstandings. Let's now consider what Wenham says about the principles of punishment in the Old Testament. He states, a characteristic of biblical law is the preeminence it accords to human as opposed to economic considerations. In Israel, offenses against life and the structure of family are punished much more severely than in other Near Eastern cultures. Similarly, the Old Testament is more severe on sexual offenses and disobedient children than other cultures. The humanitarian aspect of the biblical law is also illustrated by its abolition of substitutionary punishment. He quotes Deuteronomy 24, he quotes Deuteronomy 24, verse 16, explicitly forbidding this kind of substitutionary punishment. The fathers shall not be put to death for the children, nor shall the children be put to death for the fathers. Every man shall be put to death for his own sin. The Old Testament law does not, in fact, exact fines, for example, payments to benefit the state, but only damages, payments for the benefit of the injured party. It is a principle that punishment allows the offender to make atonement and be reconciled with society. After he has paid the penalty, the offender suffers no loss of his civil rights. Degradation of the offender as a motive for punishment is specifically excluded. And then he makes this comparison with neighboring laws. The degrading brutality of many punishments under Assyrian law is in marked contrast with the Hebrew outlook. It is against this general mildness of Hebrew law that we have to view its shocking severity with regard to a. religious offenses such as idolatry and blasphemy, b. sexual offenses such as adultery and homosexual intercourse, and c. juvenile incorrigibility, all of which attract the death penalty. Then he talks specifically about the death penalty for religious offenses. He says, at no point is it more obvious that the Old Testament directions are in harmony with basic biblical principles than here. And at no point is it more obvious that they are not suitable for incorporation into the statutes of a secular society. So I think that's an important part. Nobody's trying to impose this on a secular society. In biblical teaching, departure from the living God is fundamental sin and is the way of death. For a holy nation in covenant with the Lord to depart from Him, God, is to invite death. And this is written into the statute book of the people of Israel, where idolatry, blasphemy, divination, and profaning of the Sabbath are made punishable by death. Every Israelite would have been aware of this command or this standard of God and the punishment for violating it from their infancy. I did say that. Sorry. Concerning adultery, we will read what Wenham comments on this. Nowadays, we have come to take adultery for granted, that we fail to realize how distorted our values have become. When a man steals another's valuable property, he is severely dealt with by the law in our world. But when a man deliberately seduces and steals another man's wife and robs his children of their mother, he probably gets off scot-free. Yet in terms of the harm done and the destruction of human happiness, the first crime is venial in comparison with the second. Sexual impulses are not so uncontrollable as the novelists would have us think. In this, as in everything else, we are enormously influenced by the expected pattern of behavior. If marital infidelity is expected, the temptation will be difficult to resist. If, on the other hand, it is regarded as a heinous crime, few will succumb. Both theologically and sociologically, adultery is a heinous crime. So I just thought of the power of a common societal acceptance or rejection of certain behaviors. When I was a kid in school, there were very few instances where a girl would get pregnant before marriage. It was very rare, and it was a shock if that happened. Is society really better off now that we have relaxed our feelings about that? Just a question. Also, concerning the death penalty for murder instead of imprisonment, as we would have it. These are Wenham's comments. Now, according to the Bible, the proper penalty for murder is death now, rather than at the natural end of life. In the biblical view, murder is intrinsically a very grave crime. Its guilt rests upon the land and its inhabitants. The blood of Abel cries to God from the ground, and the ground was accursed for his sake. But though murder is a particularly grave crime, it is surely contrary to the whole thrust of the Bible to think that those who actually commit murder are necessarily exceptionally wicked. According to Christ, hatred is in principle murder. We are all Cains at heart. We are all Judases. When the final crisis came in the life of Jesus, It was the ordinary sins of ordinary people that combined together to crucify him. Love of money, cowardice, lack of principle, fear of losing a job, love of power. The murderer is usually simply one who has been brought by corporate sin of man in heredity and environment to a place of appalling temptation, and he has succumbed. That his life should be forfeit forthwith rather than at the natural time of death may be properly regarded as a decree not only of judgment but also of mercy. Murder is more than the land can bear. It is also more than the mind and conscience of the murderer can rightly bear. By death the land is purged, and by death the miseries of this sinful world are brought to an end for the murderer himself. Such was the Old Testament way of doing things, swift death for grievous crimes. So I'm going to link the first of a series of 4 videos that David did called The Bible in Bits, and also one on the Sabbath and Pharaoh's consumer society that I thought would be of interest. Next, we're going to talk about the commands concerning the Canaanites in the Old Testament.